This is Chin Music.
Hello and welcome to another season of Chin Music on the Fanatics TV channel, hosted by myself, Stephen O'Keefe, former New South Wales Sixers and Test cricketer, and my counterpart next to me on my right. He needs no introduction, however I'll give him one. He's played cricket all around the world, first-class cricket, T20 cricket, still captaining the Sixers, New South Wales legend, and has also played Test cricket for Australia. Moses Henriques, welcome.
Stephen. Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah.
It's great to be back here. I do want to talk about the elephant in the room. Who's not here. We've got a much better looking version this year. So Sok, welcome to the pod. But I do want to give a quick shout out to Tom. I know you're watching, mate, and we'll see you throughout the season. But I feel like you've got a lot of thank yous to send to Chin Music. We took you on. You were unemployed. You were single. You were on the street. Your dad didn't even want you in the house. And now look what's happened, mate. You got a missus from your new fame. You're employed. You're too busy for us now at Chin Music, mate.
Is his dad David Gallop?
Yeah, that's his dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that explains a lot. Yeah, got a job at Cricket Australia. Okay,
Yeah, so
Well done,
I'm
mate.
sure we'll get Tom back on. We'll get Tom back on the pod soon. Never fear. I know all of his mates were our only loyal fans last year, so he will be back.
Got married, Mo, which leads me into the next part of, this series. I guess we're here to, preview and review the Ashes series, which is going to be huge. There's a lot being talked about before the first ball's bowled, but, maybe we go into each other's personal lives. I guess I've had an off season, but you're still playing for New South Wales somehow. I mean, is that it's still going? How's it been with the Blues? What have you been up to? You were looking forward to the season with the Sixers. And I guess it'll lead into, you're playing a lot of cricket with Sammy Constas at the moment. How's the feel around that New South Wales team at the moment?
Yeah, I guess now that I'm not playing Shield cricket, Sok, I feel a little bit more separated than maybe at the start of last season. Only playing one-day cricket and T20 cricket. I don't feel like I'm married to the game as much. I get a lot more time off between games. I'm a lot happier. Not having to chase someone else's cricket balls for 140 overs in the field.
Because you're captaining, right up until the end. It must be a bit of a relief just to...
I thought it'd be a lot harder, sort of stopping, like retiring from Shield cricket. And I think that's when it was the right decision, was the fact that I'm a lot happier, and it was quite easy in the end. But I think the real test will come once I'm not actually playing any cricket at all. At the moment, I can still scratch the itch with one-day cricket, with T20 cricket, with training, still hanging out with the boys, and got that sort of camaraderie. But I think the real test of that transition will come, once I've completely hung the boots up. But yeah, it's been a challenging sort of last few weeks for New South Wales, because we got off to a really good start over in Perth away, winning both the one-dayer and the Shield game against the Wackers. And since then, it hasn't quite been as strong. But, I think they're doing so many good things in there. So, watch the space there. New South Wales is obviously a very proud and terrific cricketing state, and I know they're very well led by the big Jackie Edwards. Big fan of the show as well, Jack. I think things will start to turn around soon, hopefully in a couple of days against Tasmania.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment, and staunch New South Wales supporter. We're not here to necessarily talk about it, but a lot of the breeding ground for New South Wales cricket and Australian cricket, it comes from there. It's been pretty poor over the last 3 or 4 seasons, to be fair. And,
ever since you retired?
that was 5 or 6 seasons ago. That speaks volumes of the character of a man who gets sacked the year they win the Shield. What does that say about me? A lot. That's anyway. You get to hear a lot about it. It's about the Ashes, or about me. It's been disappointing to say, and I think their last loss against Victoria, I think, spoke volumes. You saw in that team that had the Australian bowling lineup essentially, but a lot of young cricketers. I thought maybe that might have freed the shackles of a guy of young Sam Constas. We saw that Australian team have two bowlers playing for New South Wales. They had to bowl 3 days in a row, and they both went down injured. And I guess that leads into my first Ashes question. What have you made of this Australian squad? It was picked and then it's had to be re-picked due to those injuries in a Shield match where you would say that the batters had let the team down. They had to bowl. Hazelwood and Abbott had to bowl 3 days straight. Both went down with hamstring strains. What have you made of this Australian squad picked for the Ashes series as the 11's just been named by Cricket Australia?
So how do you want me to answer that one? So do you want me to talk about the Shield game first, or do you want to talk about the...
Well, I think go into the Ashes squad that's led to, New South Wales' poor performance with the bat has led into the team, or I guess the Ashes squad being changed, as in Abbott and Hazelwood are out. We need Doggett and Neese are in.
Yep.
What have you made of that team now that's been changed?
I mean, no Hazelwood is going to make a big difference, especially once there was no Cummins. If it was only one of those guys and Scott Boland's coming into the bowling attack, then, it's not such a huge miss. But Scott's already come in for Cummo. Once you lose Hazelwood, now we're bringing in someone who's really inexperienced at test level with Doggett. Not to say that he won't go well, but, it just doesn't have that same, I'm sure the English batters have, much happier.
Frothing.
Yeah, much happier that Brendan Doggett's playing rather than Josh Hazelwood. It is a shame, and but these things happen. These injuries happen. The strange thing was both of them walked off the field within half hour of each other.
Yeah.
And maybe 25 overs into the game.
Lunch day 3.
Yeah, lunch day 3. They hadn't bowled an extreme amount of overs. No. It's not like they'd bowled 40 overs, but...
It's the back-to-back. I think it's as in, you have to warm up, prepare. You make 130 each innings and you too quick. That's not how you'd want to prepare. No. Lucky that Starkey held on. I mean, it just shows how weathered he is and how strong he is fit mentally to just keep producing. But Hoff hasn't finished and played a full test series. So it wasn't expected, and I guess I wasn't necessarily surprised. I guess it's just highlighted how, not weak, but, we're having to release a couple of bowlers into that bowling squad, which I think Boland, has had a great run into certainly his test career, but when he's played England in the last Ashes series, took 2 for over 200. He's coming against England again, who would think they would have his number. We're looking at an Australian cricket board that's looking at, producing flatter wickets so they go longer, so they make more money. I think this is all lending towards the way that England would want to play cricket as opposed to Australia would want to play cricket.
I definitely think, especially with the bowling attack we have at the moment, the flatter the wickets, the more it sort of plays into the England's hands at the moment. Yeah. I think we won, especially in Perth and the Gabba early on in this series, making sure there's a bit of... Irrelevant if they're flat or not, but we want to make sure those wickets are bouncy, I think, and hopefully a little bit of seam. But I think the biggest thing for us will be making sure they're fast and making sure they're bouncy, because that's just what England don't get in the UK.
Yep.
So producing something very different here to the way that our batters are used to batting, I think, and I guess the way that their batters are not used to batting will be the key for us, and obviously how well our bowlers can exploit that. But, mate, it's a huge loss. There's no doubt about it. But there's part of me that thinks if, the modern sports science, I reckon 5 years ago, Sean and Josh might have just played this first test. I think the hamstrings are quite minor. I think it's a case of, you can run the risk in the first test and then tear it off the bone and then you're out for the next 4. And it's a case of trying to manage to make sure they play the most amount of cricket possible for the summer. So hopefully Josh doesn't play the first test and then he's going to be fit for the next 4. But
he's not playing the next 4, is he? He's not play. I couldn't remember the last time he's played 4 tests at home in the summer, and I'm sure our regular listeners will be out there to say I think it's okay if he doesn't play 4, because you've always been able to bring in a Neese, a Boland, Richardson to counteract that. The one thing that I'm looking at this bowling attack and I'm going, okay, so we're missing 2 of our guys who've got, 600 plus test wickets between them in Cummins and Thingo. So there's one guy that I'm looking at that we haven't talked about, and England may not even play as a specialist spinner. I'm looking at Nathan Lyon. I'm like, okay, I look over his career. It's 500 wickets. He's the GOAT. But I'm looking at this guy going, well, this is his chance, in my opinion, in this bowling attack and this series to really make that name of himself as a great. He already is, the greatest off spinner, averages 30, but this is his time to step up with those guys missing and be the experienced guy. I think England will go in, they'll drop Bryden Cast. I think they'll go all out fast bowling. I think that's the way they're going to approach this. Shoaib Bashir has had a decent start to his test career. I think Australia will play a spinner. I think England won't. That's a prediction with their 12. So I think this is a big series for Nathan Lyon to stand up and, be the leading wicket taker. If we're talking flatter wickets, we're talking games going to day 4 and 5. I'm thinking he needs to be the guy at the end of the series for mind that is the leading wicket taker for Australia.
Yeah. Look, I don't think he really needs to do anything to prove himself at Test cricket level, but I do agree with the sentiment that, when there's deficiencies in a team like we're seeing in our attack, or I wouldn't say deficiencies, but, we don't have the experience that we had. And that's when the best players step up. And that weight's going to be carried by Starkey and Lino. And Starkey's going to carry a lot more as a strike bowler, the spearhead seamer, and even Barrel's going to have to step up as well. But yeah, you're right. Nathan's got a lot of experience. He's going to have a lot more pressure now because you're not replacing Josh Hazlewood with Josh Hazlewood. You're replacing him with Brendan Doggett, who typically goes, 3, 4, 4.5 runs and over. He's not a two runs and over guy like Josh Hazlewood. So Gazza usually comes on, Camo and Hazlewood have stopped the scoreboard, and he can sort of just get into his work, where, he might have to come on and sort of stop the flow against these English batters who will want to take him on. So I think I think the bowling attack will be put under a lot more pressure. And, I think we need to understand as fans of the international game that, especially for Doggy, he's got a little bit more pace. He's a little bit flatter trajectory, but he can swing the ball, he can nip the ball, but I think he'll go he's not going to go at 2 runs and over throughout the summer if he keeps playing. He's going to be a 4.5 runs and over guy. If he's doing well, I think he'll be 3 for 80 off his 20 kind of thing, rather than, Hoff's 3 for 55 off his 20 on a bad day kind of thing. So they're very different bowlers, and how Lino reacts to, the position of the game that he now has to bowl into compared to previously. And again, on Starkey, where Starkey in the past has been the guy whose economy rate is probably a little bit higher than the other two.
But strike rate with the guys over,
he's a genius.
Wickets
he's absolute genius. Yeah. But he, that role, him and Doggy are kind of almost, their runs could be flowing.
Yes.
And wickets could be flowing quickly as well.
Yeah. And it's a really good point. And I guess, now we've had a chat about the Australian bowling lineup. Let's have a look at their batting lineup. They've announced their 11. We're chatting, before we came on the show about how we both agree with the batting lineup. So the Australian team, they've opted to go with Weatherald at the top as opposed to Marnus. They're playing the one all-rounder at 6 now, which is Green. I think that's a sensible move. I think that's backing an opener to do an opener's job, and they're picking their best number 6. It's a tough call on Webster, but these are selections that you want to make. You agree with that?
Yeah. Look, it's tough on Bo, and I'm a big fan of his cricket, but and you know what? Up until that last Shield game, I probably would have picked Bo in front of Cameron, but Cameron's obviously played that last Shield game, got 90. Took a few wickets.
That's funny because Bo, up until he took 8 wickets,
I know
5 for knocked over Travis Head.
I wanted to I guess before you pick Cameron in a Test match for Australia again, I'm kind of like, you know what? I think we can all agree that there's so much upside to Cameron Green, but you don't want to pick him when he's not doing well. Yeah. Because if he's got doubts or if he's got demons, then he's gonna, there's gonna be it's a tough place to get rid of those doubts and demons in international cricket in the Ashes. And I think that last Shield game will be very important for him, where he's got a bit of form back
90, he bowled 17 overs, took a wicket. I think all I was looking for him was to get through 8 overs.
Yeah.
Because, he's a guy who bowls 140 Ks, and was touted before he even came on the scene as a batter, as a bowler. I was hearing more about his bowling than batting. So, we agree.
But I don't think you can pick someone to bat 3, and he's not batting 3, thankfully, but I don't think you can pick him to bat 3 for Australia.
No way.
Without, any Shield runs under his belt.
Well, the only time he did it,
a year out of the game.
The only time he did it, was when Steve Smith, because we went through so many opening batting changes at the top, and I feel like if we went with Marnus, we're repeating madness, of going with these combinations that don't work. Steve Smith stood up at number 3, and I think Cameron Green, made a name for himself in New Zealand. He made a breakthrough 100. Steve Smith was opening and he came into that 3. So people were sort of questioning it. I just think it's an easier spot for him to learn the game at 6
Agree.
and develop. So great position. Let's swing to the England side at the moment, and doing a bit of history and homework. Under the Joe Root and Silverwood, Hugo, I think I've got his name right. The coach there of the England team, Silverstone. Silverstone. That's a raceway.
Silverwood.
Piastri, maybe it's the Formula One. Under their regime, leading into when Giles got the axe, the coach got the axe, and the captain got the sack. They were one win from 17 tests. They were nowhere. In steps McCullum, in steps Stokes, in steps Robert Key as cricketing managing director or whatever you want to call it. All of a sudden, out of the ashes of the 21-22 series where they got thumped at home comes this new brand of brave, bold cricket, which some people were questioning whether it had been invented by them. I'm sure the pundits believe that this is the England way of playing. Australia been playing that way the whole time, but you can't doubt their performances have been exciting and great to watch. Do you think their team and this new attitude has got the ability to win a test in Australia, because they haven't done since 2010 and 11, but also go on and win the series?
Yeah, definitely an entertaining cricket team. I personally love watching them play. I don't think they're going to win the series. I think they'll definitely win a test. I think their ability to challenge consistently throughout the series will remain solely on the back of Wood and Archer's fitness. So I think if those two guys if they can play more than 3 tests each, and hopefully in the same test match, so that they can create a little bit of extra pressure, especially Archer. But I think those two guys will be the key to England having a chance in this series. And then batting wise, I think if we want to see Root, Brook, and Stokes do their thing, I feel like Pope. And what's the little
Zach Crawley, Ben Duckett?
I don't think. I think Zach Crawley's going to. I love watching Zach Crawley play, and technically, I think he's a beautiful batsman. But sometimes I think in Australian conditions, especially Perth and Gabba, the better your technique is and the straighter your bat is, the more likely you are to nick off.
Yeah. Well, Australia loves it. 3 slips, they'll start like that, and I think potentially with the way that they want to play, under Steve Smith, they're going to have to put a deep point in. These guys, particularly Duckett and Crawley, like to attack square the wicket, and singles for them will shut down their game.
Well, I think Duckett will hold the key in terms of getting some overs into our bowlers before Root and Brook come out to bat and Stokes come out. Ideally, Brook's coming out to bat 50 overs into the innings. Yeah, I don't think England want Brook coming out in Starkey's first spell. Well, obviously they don't. But the difference of Starkey being in his third spell as opposed to his, fresh in his second spell to when Harry Brook comes out to bat, I think will make a huge difference in this series consistently. So, I think the openers and the number 3, Pope, I think that...
Lucky, do you think? We've got Jacob Bethel there, who's, he's the future for mine for England. And Pope, through his, 20-plus tests, averaged high 30s, there and thereabouts. Could have easily gone to Bethel, got a one-day 100, can bowl some handy left-arm finger spin, Mate,
I could not disagree more there, to be honest.
So you're a big Pope fan?
Well, I mean...
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'm an atheist.
You're
Pope's full of shit.
I'd like to see some more. There's nothing wrong with high 30s for me in Test cricket. Obviously Pope wants to be higher, but he's not an old man. He's still early 20s, mid 20s. I think he's a fantastic cricketer.
Same with Crawley. Are you saying the same about Crawley? Because
I reckon their averages are 10 runs apart, the two of them.
Yeah, but still a guy you would think who's been given an extended run, you would think at Test cricket whilst being, I guess mediocre in both their positions. You could create an argument for both sides of the coin of saying, well, I appreciate that England are coming into this and holding on to a team that they've had for 18, 24 months and played consistent cricket together, but you could have easily seen the back of Zach Crawley and you could have easily seen the back of Pope.
Yeah, I think I'll give you Zach Crawley in terms of, I think this will be the series for him. If he doesn't do well here in Australia, I think it's, he'll find it tough to get another opportunity in the next 12 months. But I think Pope's a slightly different kettle of fish for me. I think he's going to be a 100 test player for England.
Wow.
I think he's shown enough at this level. I don't think he's on borrowed time at all. I think he's going to do quite well.
Okay.
And out of him and Bethel, I've got no doubt Bethel will play a lot of Test cricket for England, but
not now.
Not yet.
Okay, so all right, so let's move down the batting. Let's go to Root. Averages 35 in Australia, yet to hit 100. I mean, it's funny how pundits make a big deal. I think his high score in Australia is in the 90s. How much of a big deal we make about 4 runs? He'll go down as one of the greatest. Close to 14,000 Test runs. Hasn't scored 100 in Australia. Averages 35. You talked about the way that England plays. He's a big nicker, stands leg side of it. Most times he comes out of the Aussie bowlers find his number. Do you think anything will change with him? He's coming in red hot form. Under the Stokes, McCullum, captaincy and coaching, he's striking at 65%. He's changed his game. He's moulded to evolve with the game. Will we see that Joe Root here in Australia?
I think he'll be the happiest man in that batting order that Hazelwood and Cummins aren't playing this first test.
Yeah.
Like they're the two guys that have troubled him over the years, and giving him some breathing space in that first test without having that relentless Hazelwood and relentless Cummins sort of pace, bounce, line and length, testing both sides of the bat. God, if he gets off to a heater in Perth, I'm a bit worried about what can happen and the follow-on effect of that. But he'll be the happiest batter out of all those top 6 batters that, Hazelwood and Cummins, because I feel like those two have had his measure collectively. They've sort of had it over him for a long time now. And without them starting in this first test, I feel like he's going to, the runs could definitely flow pretty quickly for him.
I totally agree. And, I've come out and tipped England to win this series 3-2, and I'm tipping them to win the first 2. Almost like for my prediction of 3-2 to England, it's the difference between who I want to win. I want Australia to win 5-0. I think England will win this Ashes series. I think they'll win the first 2 tests, and I think it's because they've got a bowling lineup over 140 Ks, can bowl in flat conditions, and if also it's nipping around. Australia lost to India at Perth Stadium. It's not Optus now, it's Perth Stadium, by 200 plus runs. So, maybe there's a bit of that. Perennial slow starters like to get into their work. You combine that with Hazelwood and Cummins out of the test series, but I think Joe Root has evolved his game now into one that's being aggressive. So you look at that batting lineup, bowling lineup of the Australian team, there's less pressure on him. When you look at the senior players now, someone like Stokes, who I think can almost be their best bowler in that bowling lineup, who's fitter, stronger and smarter as their all-rounder and captain, I think there's warning signs for Australia. So if you look at that whole team, you wanted to, Root is a guy that you're looking at. I'm looking at someone like Ben Stokes, who I think will be player of the series. For his captaincy, if England were to win, who do you think would be the stars in that England lineup?
I think Jofra. I think that's it. Like, he needs to take. Yeah, I actually feel like England have missed a trick not naming Ollie Robinson in their bowling attack.
So they've got Pepper Potts, who I think kind of, is that sort of medium.
Who's that, sorry?
Potts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Hugo. Pepper Potts,
they've
Iron
also,
Man's missus. Yeah,
they've also got Josh Tongue in the squad as well, who I think we'll see throughout the summer. I'm a fan of Josh. He's
Matthew Potts, but he's your medium pace. Josh Tongue still gets the ball at 140.
So does Potts. Potts has got a bit of pace,
but Ollie doesn't.
No, he doesn't. But
he just carries on a bit, right? Remember when he knocked over Aussie for 140 and carried on like a pork chop?
Yeah, but I felt the last Ashes series, England were here when Ollie wasn't bowling, runs were flying way too quickly, and I felt like he was their best bowler out here last time. And
that's huge to say, because I mean they absolutely had their pants pulled down. So to say it's like it was the best in a pretty ordinary team.
Well, yeah, you can say what you want, but the other thing is, over the last 15 years of English fast bowlers, who have been their 2 best bowlers, like Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad, and they both bowled over 140 back in the day, but not in the last 10 years. And my concern is who's been dominating Shield cricket in the last 2 or 3 years. It's not extra fast bowlers. It's little dobbly seamers who are accurate and put the ball on a spot. And last year's test wickets took a step back to being a little bit more similar to the Shield wickets, where typically, the test wickets in Australia are flat, lots of runs, and there's a big toil in the field. And it's usually a battle of who can create something on these flat wickets. But last year and even the year before, I feel like the tests, there's less tests going to the fifth day. There's more in the wicket. There's probably less need for that extra pace, and there's more need for accuracy. There's more need to control the scoreboard. I think Ollie Robinson can give him that, especially if his other two counterparts were, Jofra and...
And it sucks though, doesn't it? It's like, I remember in grade cricket, they brought back the regulation ball and then went to a turf ball. The blokes playing in their 40s who bowl with the regulation, who's had a seam like that, who bowl in a $1.05 and they'd be knocking over teams and getting sixes. It's shit to watch. I want to see a good, healthy competition. And I guess my next question, what do we expect to see at Perth? Cricket Australia are saying they're bleeding money. They need these games to go in. I've bought tickets to day 4 at the Gabba and I'm like, fingers crossed the game goes there. Last time I went there was Shamar Joseph who ripped through.
Test match.
I agree. And that's extra pace bowling. I think England have got 4 Shamar Josephs when they fire up on their day. That's just a personal opinion. But what do you expect to see, Perth? Are we going to get, a wicket that goes into day 5? Are we going to see what we've seen last? Both teams, like India, knocked over in, for 100 odd and then,
big second innings.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have no idea. Just because that wicket's still quite, I guess it's still in its infancy as a cricket destination over there at Optus.
There was an interview with the curator. There was 10 cameras, 30 reporters. That's the interest around this Ashes series, but also people just want to get on with it. But that's what the curator had to face and the pressure.
You know what? Some of these curators are on big money side. And some of the wickets,
bullshit.
Some of the wickets.
How hard is it to mow a lawn?
Mate, some of the wickets that have been
get a roller
some
out.
of the wickets that have been served up in Shield cricket over the last 2 or 3 years.
Haven't been mowed. So it's like, having 3 days off a week.
Heaven forbid someone else has to have a bit of accountability for their job.
No, I agree. And so what do you expect to see? Do you think we're going to get one of those dicey wickets that we saw against India where it's like, 100 plays 100, then it might flatten out and open up?
You know what I hate in cricket wickets? Wickets that are just dominated by the toss. And I feel like, when you create these wickets with a huge amount of moisture in it day 1, and then the moisture dies out by the morning of day 2, is this too much in favour of whichever team, Yeah,
you can lose the game, right, on day 1. So, if you win the toss and bowl and you rub a team out for 80 or not, you can't win a game in the first day, but you can certainly lose it in a sense. Yeah. And probably seen a bit too much of that, right? Particularly around Shield cricket, I think the percentages would speak volumes of what you're saying. Most teams win, toss and bowl. Like when I was told, my granddad would say you 9 times out of 10 you bat first, and then the 10th time you think about it, but then you still bat. But now it's completely changed.
It's the opposite way around at the moment.
Yeah, but I think the pressure from Cricket Australia will be a bit like what we saw at the SCG. Day 2 being the first day wicket, and I think we're going to see that flatter across the board. Yep. You're hopeful they've a really good cricket wicket.
Yeah, but I just Sydney last year, Melbourne last year, seaming wickets.
Sydney's got to sort its act out. Even that Shield wicket was shit ass in my opinion.
I just, if I was England, I would have at least put one egg in the basket that can bowl, when it's seaming and it's nipping and you might not need the pace. Because fact of the matter is, you come to Australia, if you're not accurate, if you don't put the ball where it needs to go, you will go.
Is that your problem with Tongue and Atkinson and Cass? Is they can be a bit? I love their bowling attack. I think it's going to be. I think that's where they're going to win the game. Just relentless pressure, square wickets, big time. They can bang the ball in. They can bash it. They pick 5 quicks. They're just gonna. There is no Wood, Archer. Then you go 140 plus, 140 plus, 140 plus, and they can just bash and smack it into our ribs. No one's going to enjoy that. That's their plan B.
No, but they won't enjoy it if they're leaking 2 boundaries and over as well. So it's like 140 plus is one thing, but tick and 150, which Jofra and Wood can do, is a completely different beast to bowling 140.
Yep.
So you get a bit more, of a margin for error once you tick and 150. And Jofra's, as we've seen in the past, extremely accurate for the pace that he bowls as well. But Potts and Tongue are probably just 140. I don't know about Cass. I haven't faced him for probably 2 years now, but he's the one guy I think, on these wickets, if he's a bit too short, he could, and bowls to fields where he's not protected, he might be exactly what Travis Head wants to face.
Yeah.
Or he might be exactly what, Uzi wants to face. Uzi barely wants to come forward. So these, a lot of the English bowlers prefer bowling, or they have to bowl a slightly shorter length, because in England, there's not as much bounce. So they're all bowling a bit shorter. They come here to Australia, they probably bowl a little too short. And our batters just lap that up. And,
Stop it up.
Yeah, and I think with that extra pace, they might think, oh, yeah, we're going to bully him out. We're going to bowl short. And I'm not sure that's the right length to bowl. Definitely, if you're targeting someone, the armpit, bounces, etc., different story. But I'm just talking, as a general length, they need to make a good metre and a half adjustment in comparison to when they're bowling at home in England.
What's a fair point? I appreciate that you're backing the Aussies in. I think there's, I think a lot of people have said that the Aussie team looks unsettled at the top. I think we're really settled. Marnus is back to where he's been when he's playing his best cricket at 3, and he's gone an average 60 for the Shield summer. Usman's at the top. It's a big summer for him. We know that, because if it doesn't go well, it's the end of his cricket career. I don't agree with the adage that we're too old. I think we've picked our best lineup. I just think if it doesn't go well, it's the end of Uzi's career. If it doesn't, if Marnus doesn't fire, where do you go to after dropping him and giving an opportunity? So there's more questions.
And there's nothing wrong with saying that. I mean, he's 30. He's had a terrific cricket career.
He turned 39 during this test
Well, there you go.
series.
He's 39. That's a terrific test career, and there's nothing wrong with saying this could be his last test career.
Oh, no, it will be. If he gets it wrong, that's it.
That's it. And it's, but we can celebrate that. But you're right. If we don't win and he doesn't do well, that's
it's done. But that could be done. And my prediction is that they're going to win the first 2 tests. I think they'll win the first 3. If they get off into a bounce and land the first blow, I think they'll get the momentum to what they need. Okay, so we'll get into
Marnus and Smudge for me, mate.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get into predictions.
Those two.
Smudge has been real good in Shield cricket this year.
Well, it's just, I'm very happy Marnus started scoring some started bulking some big runs over the last 2 months, because, we could have tried Green at 3, we could have tried someone else at 3, but the fact of the matter is, we don't have any batters in Australia that have the batting temperament of, say, Marnus, or the batting temperament and the batting skill together of Marnus and Steve. And I think those two...
They get real weird, don't they?
Yeah,
can you imagine them batting again to get a session and letting the ball go? And
Exactly.
It's going to get strange.
They're the two... I remember I watched Haydos do an interview the other day, and he said...
That's weird as well. He's weird.
But I watched him
He said if Joe Root gets 100, he's going to do a nudie lap. Was it? Around the MCG? If he doesn't get 100, he's going to do a nudie lap.
I don't know which one.
I'd like to see that.
There was one thing he said that stuck with me, Sok. He said... There was a thing, and Andy Caddick, he was giving Andy Caddick shit, and then Andy Caddick said something, and he walked into the sheds. He's like, you know what, I'm not going to let that grey-haired fuck, or whatever he said, I'm not going to let him get me out for the rest of the day. And that sort of grit, I know he's talking but that grit, I think basically Uzi, Marnus, and Steve are probably the only 3 batters that we have that can go, you know what, I'm just not going to get out today. Yeah. And especially Marnus and Steve. They're the 2 guys that, when they're motivated and batting well, they just you just won't get them out. Yeah. Where even when Hedy's at his best and he's flying,
he's rocks the diamonds. He's 3 golden ducks in a row, followed by a 70-ball 100.
And he'll win you a test, and he'll win you a couple of tests. But he's not I think we need Smudge and Marnus to nullify this bowling attack. To soak up a lot of cricket balls.
I agree. I think Smudge, watching him during this Shield season, was pretty special. He's 100 at the Gabba, where he took 21 balls to get off the mark. It's almost like
Did you see that bowling attack?
No, I agree. But that leads me into my next question. He's like, well, he took his time but did what he needed to do. At the SCG he stood out in that batting line at 53, got out slogging to be the second or last wicket, 50, and then 50 in the second innings. When it got tricky, but he just applied himself. That's all I was looking for. He's like, he could have easily just sat that out, been batting and batting cage for New York, and now he's mentally switched on. Marnus has got these hundreds. batting cage. Well, is there cricket nets in the US?
Mate, I think he was working on his handicap over there.
Well, he said he's lost his hands. Every time you speak to Smudge, his hands are lost and they're back. But Marnus, okay, so he's got these hundreds, but it's not the same pressure that he's going to get when it's 140 plus. And my biggest question is, Marnus still hasn't proven himself over time during the test. recent tests.
No, he hasn't.
Yeah, that's right. But he's got runs in Shield cricket. But I'm like, what weight do you put on that? It's almost like saying you're winning a Wednesday, a meet race at Canterbury versus going and racing in a Group 1 on a Saturday. The step up in grade is huge.
It is
He's
huge.
proven on those midweek Wednesday, highways. I think when we come in against this English attack, which is going to be relentless fast bowling, Shamar Joseph squared him up. The West Indian team did his number, back of a length, not even fast. This was a while ago, but there were signs there for me that when the ball got even a little bit quick or into that midriff area, his technique was exposed. Yeah. And I'm not sure he's been asked that same question.
No, I can. Watching him bat, he's done a lot of work on his technique, and I think that's why he's been scoring runs. He's been batting on some tricky wickets in Shield cricket as well.
Okay.
And I think he's made some changes to his technique. Little ones, subtle ones. But yeah, I felt like maybe his back, like in the last 18 months of Test cricket, maybe his back hip was coming around a little bit too much, and he had a little bit of a a windscreen wiper with his bat through the front pad, which is, for us right-handers, that's a very common problem. I've suffered from the windscreen wiper before, but I think from what I'm seeing, that bat's coming down on a nice plane. That back hip isn't turning out as much. Having said that, at 145, it's asking you different questions.
Yeah.
I
Not
agree
just
with
once,
that.
you would Archer, bang, bang.
But what I will say, I think Marnus is the faster you bowl, I think Marnus plays better because he actually doesn't have to get his weight back through the ball. So I think slow, medium pace dobblers where he does his little back and across prelim, and then if they pitch it up, he has to move again to get to the pitch of the ball. When he doesn't have to move again and he can just use the pace of the bowlers, I think that's when he's a better player. So if I was England and I wanted to get Marnus out, like Ollie Robinson, 100%, and Smudge as well, both of them, they don't really want to move again after they've done their prelim. And I think the faster you bowl, the less you need to shift your weight either way because you can use the speed of the ball. So if you're not quite over your front pad or over your front leg, you can still get away with it as long as you're playing the right line of the ball.
Yeah.
But I think Marnus has sort of struggled in the past when the bowling's, it's a nippy sort of slower bowlers and he almost gets out in front a little bit. His back hit turns around. But with that extra pace, it might play into his hands where, he actually doesn't even have the time to turn his back hip around and square up. And I've always, personally for me, I sit in that boat of I prefer the faster bowling because I don't need to get my weight back through the ball. I can just almost sit on the stumps, play off the back foot. And if it's full, you don't really need to make another movement. The ball just hits they're bowling so fast, you don't need to make the speed. Yeah. Where you face those slower, medium-pace bowlers, and not that, Ollie Robinson's not a slow, medium-pace bowler, but if you're going to try and drive him, you need to hit the ball. Yeah. Where with Wood and Archer, you can almost like check block them through the covers because they're bowling. Yeah,
you miss your length by enough. There's opportunities to
score.
So
I just think that might play into Marnus's hands a bit if he's sharp enough. That could work for him, and that in the past has worked for Uzi. But as we mentioned, he's a bit older now. He's been playing the pull shot a lot in Shield cricket, but not like there hasn't been anyone bowling Jofra and Wood's pace. So I know that's going to be thrown to him throughout the summer, and I think that will be, and obviously Archer's ability to come around the wicket and take the ball away from our left-handed openers, and we've got two left-handed openers. And as you said, I would have picked both of them as well. And if it wasn't Jake, it would have been Renshaw, so it would have been another left-handed opener for me anyway. But it's the same. Same question. It's going to be Jofra taking the ball away from you from around the wicket.
All right. Well, look, pretty good wrap up so far. Let's get into some bold predictions of the first test. It's funny, isn't it? I think back to first balls and Ashes series and what it's meant. Harmison bowling the ball to second slip. I remember Andrew Strauss getting out to Hilton House at the Gabba, and then England piling on the runs. Starkey at the Gabba. Hugo, need your help again here. Who was the opener around his pads? The left-hander that
Rory Burns.
Burns, yeah. And what that first over means, in a test series. I think England are going to come out fully prepared and going to land that first blow. So I'm going to say England win
fully
this.
Fully prepared on the back of what?
Fully prepared as in mentally.
Okay.
As in, they're coming with a new game plan. They're not going to be timid.
Yeah.
They're coming to play aggressive cricket. They've knocked the ego out of their commentary in and around the team. I think they're mentally prepared, and I think they've been playing some tough cricket in regards to India at home, which they lost to, but willing to lose to win. And you don't see that too many often in cricket teams. And I think to win a test over here, and you haven't done for 15 years, you need to come with something really bold and different. Yeah. In my opinion, that's what they're going to do. And I think they'll do it behind their bowling attack, and I think you'll see their stars step up. So I think you'll see at the top of the order, Root and Stokes in particular highlighted in this first test, and series go on and have a big series. That's my bold prediction. How do you see this first test playing out?
I'm going to play it a bit safer, mate. I think I still have Australia.
You're going to play Joe Root and Silverstone, and one from 17.
Yeah,
just block a few.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go Australia 3-1. I'm going to say Wood torn hammy in the first test. Fortunately for the Australian cricket team, he hasn't played much cricket. I don't think I don't know, unless they've been playing trial games and practice games behind closed doors. When I'm not sure, if he's got enough of a workload to hold up, to be able to play 3 or 4 tests throughout the summer, and maybe the excitement of the first tests. And I'm told he's a relatively sort of, he gets pretty nervous, uses up a lot of energy before
Last
the
test
game
was
starts.
February. Last test he played was February. Yeah.
So, if he's one of those guys where he's using up a lot of that sort of bandwidth before the game even starts, it usually means, your cortisol levels are up, your wheels are spinning, the beans are running, and then, I don't know, it's a high-stress environment, the first Ashes test. I'm saying, torn hammy, day one.
Okay, so Wood's out, torn hammy, Australia go on and land the first blow, and then you're saying the momentum from there, you're allowed to bring Cummins in and whatever. Yeah. In particular, in this wicket, you're seeing go the 5 days, or do you think it'll just be nip off? If I had to go Perth test, high score for both sides, best bowling, and
I think it's going to go 5 days. I think it's going to go 5 days.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah. And that's on the back of the batting quality versus, last year at Optus we had Bumrah, we had Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark. There was a lot of fantastic bowling. And we still have a lot of high-quality bowling, but I think we've got a lot of high-quality batting here as well on both teams. Both teams' middle order are their strengths. And then you got, I think it'll be Duckett versus Uzi at the top. And then obviously Smudge versus Joe as the anchors of the team. And they almost set up pretty similarly. Like after that, you got Head and Brook as the shot makers at 5, Green and Stokes as the all-rounders. And then, I think they'll keep Bashir in. And I think they should keep Bashir in just because if they're going to pick 3 fasties, like, guys who bowl 145, there will be potential for that scoreboard to leak and for the ability to, they might end up only bowling 70 overs in a day or something like that. If they pick 5 seamers, how good? I mean, we're only seeing 82 overs in a day as it is. Imagine watching a test, 70. a day of test cricket with 5 seamers. Yeah, we'd get 73 overs in.
Well, I think they've obviously got Root, but you're right. I mean, that's how they'll go all out. And if it's a 5-day test, I think it does. Spinner's going to play a big part, and that lends itself to my original thought that Nathan Lyon needs to step up.
I think Atkinson's going to be big as well.
Okay.
I think he bowls a slightly more attacking length than the other seamies. He's a little bit fuller, which I think the Australian conditions will suit him. I'd like to see him play. I reckon the Aussie batters would prefer Cast to play instead of Atkinson. And I reckon, I think if Atkinson plays, that'll be a better team for England.
Better balance for England. Yeah. I think, I do agree. I think the question will be around Bashir or Cast. I think that's fighting for that last spot. So, all right, you have England, Australia winning the first test. I've got England winning it. You have it going 5 days. I think it might go 5 days, but I think that plays into England's hands. I guess we've had a really good preview. I think everyone around the country's hyped and, so hungry to see this first test. I think for 15 years, it'll be the first time ever that we probably feel like we're going to be in for a close contest. That's it for Chin Music. We'll be here to review each day's play. go over our predictions, Mo, and forecast how we think the rest of the Test series might go.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sok. And I guess what's different to last year, ladies and gentlemen, is we will be bringing you
There's
updates.
ladies listening. Oh,
yeah, there's a few ladies
Tom's
listening.
missus still listening?
Tom's girlfriend. Maybe she's not listening anymore now that he's not on the show. So we lost our only lady.
Just watching.
But my missus will be listening, won't you, Soph? Come on. And Lexi's listening as well.
Oh, yeah.
So,
every week.
But I think, going forward, we're going to be reviewing each day's play. And then we'll be doing some longer form interviews throughout the summer as well. So make sure you tune into those.
No,
we're going to get Tom back.
No, mate. We'll get Tom cricket. I was a prick to play with. No one.
We'll get Tom Gallop back.
Okay, that's
David's son.
Okay,
and then,
yeah.
And then we don't
get David
know.
on? He might be a good
AB DeVilliers keeps begging me to get on this show, so we'll chase that one up.
Okay. Well, there you have it. You've listened to a couple of the wisest heads, both Captain New South Wales, one very good, one very poorly. I'll let you work that out. But we're looking forward to having a chat with you at some stage during this Test series. Thank you, Moses. Thank you, Hugo. We'll be back again tomorrow.
That was Chin Music. Like and subscribe for more.